Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we are going to be doing another video talking about how you can improve as a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Now I do have some notes on my pad today that I'm going to be looking at, so if you see my eyes going down, I do apologize. I'm just looking at the notes for today. So the main topic we're going to be discussing today about, guys, is proper playtesting. And there's a lot of different ways you can go into this, but we're mainly just going to be focusing on the different ways of playtesting. Now, for me, personally, there are three different types of playtesting. You have the playing by yourself playtesting, which I'll talk about. You have playing with your friends playtesting, which is number 2. And the last one you have is taking your deck into combat, as I call it. So let me go into depth about these different phases. The first one is playing with yourself, pretty much. Not doing random games. A lot of times what I see a lot of players do is they just say, oh, I'm going to go play some random games at locals, and that is my playtesting. You may get 5-6 games in, but is that really enough to know your deck and how it functions and the proper ratios and what works best and understanding different situations that may arise if you take it to a competitive event? No, it's not. So what are some ways that you can make your deck more efficient, make it better overall, is through testing. And to do that, one of my favorite ways of testing is practice shuffling. Now, what is this? So pretty much practice shuffling is something that you can do yourself anytime. Say you're playing against a deck that you know is top tier. Let's use a past deck, True Draco, or Zodiac, or whatever good past deck you want to play against. And this is something I do necessarily even when I'm playing against with Teledad. What's some good decks to play if you want to play test for older formats like Goat, for example, or Teledad, or Dragon Rulers. Think about what's the most optimum play they can make. How can I crack their board? What if their play is like this? What if you're going second? What if you're going first? What are your different plays you had? And all you do is you just take your deck, shuffle, 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 shuffle. Draw your 5 cards. If you want to practice going first, look at your 5 cards. Okay, I'm going first. I want to make a board that can sustain, let's say he's got a powerful play, he's got the diagram, he's got the True King, he's got that, he's got the Cosmic Cyclone out my board. How can I deal with this? How can I counter this? What's the most optimal play going first? You know, how can I defend against his going second, getting that extra card, getting the ability to attack me? What will he do? So you can practice going first. Then you can practice going second, which is something I always try to do, because usually in today's game, if you're playing, your opponent will want to go first and they'll give you second. So you're somewhat at a disadvantage because you don't have the free reign to set up your boards. So let's say you're going second and they set 3 back row. Well, how am I going to deal with that 3 back row? Did I draw into Twin Twister? Did I not? Well, what should I do? Should I try to bait out the back row? Should I not? Should I just go all in? There's different ways you can approach it, and you can just do that in your mind if you're just playing with your deck. You just open your 5 cards. Another way, which I've heard people suggest to do, and I was the reason I even decided to do this video is because it's actually a video I always thought about doing. I just never got around to doing it necessarily, but I did see another YouTuber whose name escapes my mind talk about this some time ago, who I actually watched their videos a lot, and I want to talk about the topic as well. Is something which I've seen other people do and I've done from time to time, is instead of drawing your 5 cards in your opening hand, draw 4 cards. Now what do you mean? Okay, say a good example, which I've heard before, is say you want to get a Cosmic Cyclone, a Twin Twister, an MST, and you want to say, okay, they have that one powerful back row, that one card. Which one of these cards, number 1, will be the best for this scenario and in my deck necessarily? Number 2, is it optimal to be drawing this card? So what you can do is, instead of drawing 5 cards, you draw 4 cards. And then your 5th card is, say, that Twin Twister with a Cosmic Cyclone with an MST, and you say, okay, which one is best in this situation? And number 2, is it necessary? Does my deck need this card? You know, if you're testing out different cards, because you may say your deck needs more back row removal, it needs more effect negation, it needs more monster destruction. Do I run double Dark Hole and a Regeki for that? Do I just run one Dark Hole, one Regeki? There's a lot of different ways you can do that, but that's just playtesting with yourself. Another way you can playtest is playtesting against your friends. And I don't mean necessarily actually playing against your friends. I mean playing with open hands. You draw 5 cards, they draw 5 cards. Now everything that I just talked about applies to this. You can use going first, going second, what cards you may need, what cards you think you may need because the meta is a certain way, the Cosmic Cyclone, the MST, all those ways I talked about you can play with yourself, you can now do with a partner. And it's kind of nice because you can talk back and forth depending upon the skill level of the person you're against, if they're playing a competitive deck. So for example, let's say that I'm playing, I don't know, World Chalice or Trick Stars. Let's go with World Chalice or Trick Stars. And my opponent's playing True Draco Demise or Zodiac from past formats or whatever deck it could be, okay? So what I could do is I could draw my 5 cards, look at my hand, lay the cards out, my opponent lays his cards out, and the number one thing I'm going to mention before I go any further is do not play in a way that because you know your opponent's hand because they put it out for you, don't play around their hand. Do what you would normally do, okay? So yes, you get to see their hand, and you are helping each other back and forth figure out how to play the deck properly with this said hand against this said deck that you're playtesting against, so that when you're in a tournament you understand how to play it. This is something I did back in Shadal, BA, Teleknight format, because there was a whole bunch of decks that were popular and you want to know how your deck, like BA or Shadals or Teleknights, would be good against other said deck. How would it fare? How would you play against this deck? Because there was a lot of decks that were meta in that time. So, back on track now. You got an open hand, your opponent's got an open hand. Do not play around their hand. Play as you would normally play. And then your opponent, you would say, well, do you think this is a good play? And they would say yes or no, or I would probably do this because this deck that I'm playing is weak against this. It's weak against back row removal. It's weak against monster effects. It's weak at, it targets stuff. So it's weak against that. So a monster that can't be targeted is a good monster. There's a lot of different ways you can go about this, but it helps you and your friend practice, and you just keep doing that. And in the same turn as well, guys, if you can do the same thing as before, like you both open with 4 hands and you both play test certain cards you would like to have in your opening hand, and you can go from there. It's a really useful tool. So that is what I call pretty much just practicing, just testing. You're learning, you're not even learning the deck, you're just learning how to combat the meta. Now if you're trying to learn the deck, that's when I say it's good to go in a little bit blind. And what I mean by that is just playing against your friends, which is number 2 here we're talking about. We've already talked about number 1, which is pretty much, if you want to compare it to military terms, number 1, you're not playing a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You're testing your hands, how to play against certain decks, how to play against certain boards efficiently. And you can get more games in that way, because you can be like, okay, play with open hand, this is how I play against your deck, draw a couple cards deeper into your deck, okay, this is how the game's going to go. We know already. While if you were playing a regular game, that takes time, you're entering the tournament, that's a waste of money just to test, while you and your buddy could just test on the side that way and get a lot more games in a shorter amount of time usually. That's usually what happens. So, that's just practicing. In military terms, I would consider that, like I was about to say earlier, to like target practicing. You can do it yourself, or you can target practice with a buddy, all right? You're testing, you're learning how the gun functions, how it works, accuracy, range, the kickback of the gun, how big it is depending, the power of it. Number 2, you're doing your war games, okay? You're going into combat, but it's a game, it's a war game. You're practicing your troop movements, your troop, where to place your men at. It's not live combat yet, it's practicing for that next step, which is live combat. And that is playing with your deck now. You've tested your deck out, you understand how certain matchups work, you probably even understand how it functions even. Probably before you even picked up the deck, you were testing it online most likely, or to some degree maybe even play with it with some buddies, just to understand the basic combos and what it does. That's the first thing you need to do before you even start play testing for the meta. So, you've done all of that. Now you're play testing against friends in casual settings. Okay, I want to play against True Draco to see how my insert dot deck here does against it. Okay, now we're going into live combat to some degree. We're into these war games. You're testing it. How's it function? How's it work now? We've taken the theory, the theorio, and we're putting it into practice now. So that's what I call playtesting. You're just playing single games, not matches yet, and you're just learning how to do that. The second part of that playtesting now is side decking. You can practice now if you want to get more in depth. If you got a regionals coming up, you got important locals if you want to. We have regionals or YCS coming up. What you can do now is you can practice your side decking, which is something I know all players, they don't do enough, I've seen, but they should, and it's really important to practice your side decking. What side deck cards work against the meta? What side deck cards can you have? Countering your opponent's side decks that they side deck for you, that mind game, which is always fun. You know, they put in a side deck and you put in a side deck card that counters their side deck card that they put in. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! Inception, but it's important to know that. And you can do that while you're playing singles or matches now if you're preparing for regionals or YCS. And that encompasses what I call the war game strategy. So we've gone through one, which is practicing, theorio. Number two, live play testing, practicing single games and matches without showing your hand. And you're just testing it out. How does the deck flow? How does it function? It's war games. It's not the real thing. Now, you finally have the real thing. Now, the real thing could be a bunch of different things. It could be a local tournament, which to some players may be a testing ground to see how it does in a semi-competitive setting. All right? That's what some locals can be. That's what I know a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players do. That they'll take their decks, especially around if they got a regionals in a week or a YCS coming up in a month or two. The format's not going to change. They'll go to a couple locals and their play test and practice as they would at a YCS or regionals. They do the exact same things. They get into that mode as if it's the real McCoy, the real thing. To some other players, that's what it could be to some players. So it could just be another mini step up, preparing themselves in those war games, those practice scenarios, those practice games. To others, it could be the live thing where the bullets are flying. The real war is what I mean. You're practicing. You've done the testing, you've practiced, you understand the deck, you understand how it faces against the meta. Now it's time to take the gun and shoot it with live bullets to figure out how it functions and for you, the player, to understand how it works. Eventually, hopefully, through enough play testing, play practicing, live action duels, and I don't mean like a game, but like playing in real life in a tournament setting, you will get so good at that deck that you will get to a point where you can play that deck in your sleep and you know how to play it against every single meta matchup that you will face. If you get to that point, then you have what I called mastered the deck. You have reached Yu-Gi-Oh! Nirvana with that deck. I love the band, but you have reached Yu-Gi-Oh! Nirvana. You understand the deck, you understand how to play against the meta, you understand the side decks, how to counter the side, you understand everything. You may not be amazing, you may not be godlike, you may mess up because you're human. Because you're a human Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, and people in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are subject to error because we are humans. But you will have reached Yu-Gi-Oh! Nirvana if you are literally in your sleep and you'll be like, draw Gravekeeper Spy, set Spy, flip Spy, normal summon Recruiter, normal summon Descendant, pop that card because that's important to them. I'm going back to my GK days when that was meta. Literally, it took for about a 6, 7, 8 month stretch. Seto Kaiba would dream of playing GKs in his sleep. I swear. But that's why I reached Gravekeeper Nirvana, I call it. But yes, I know that's in depth and everything, and it's very important to understand that. Now, there's some other things I do want to mention before I wrap this video up here. Testing groups. Now, this is something that's important, and it's really important in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is if you have a group of buddies or you have a team, each of your team could maybe have different meta decks. So let's say there's 3 important meta decks in the format. Or even if it's a single format, maybe each of your friends have different techs or different ways they run the deck. A good example recently, I guess you could say, would be pure Zodiac, pure True Draco, Zodiac True Draco, Draco Demise, all the Draco Dinosaurs, Zodiac Dino, all these different versions of similar decks, you know what I'm trying to say? And so if each of your buddies is playing a different version, you can practice against them in a way to practice yourself against the meta. So you can do all the things I just talked about, the 3 phases, your Theorio, your troop movements, you're practicing in a live setting, and then literally you can do those things with a group, and you can do a lot better. As one person with their deck is working on the other person could be working on a different deck, and it becomes more efficiency. It's like an assembly line. Okay, you're done testing with him, now you move to this guy. You're done testing with him, now you move to this guy, And that's something I used to do back in the day. But I don't have the time to do all these things anymore, so I just pretty much have to pick up a deck and learn it by myself mostly, which is what most players want to do. But if you really want to become super competitive and super meta and really get into the meta and try to improve yourself, that's the way to do it, is the way I told you. It's successful. Other players do it. They form testing groups with other competitive players. They test their decks. They follow these rules, playing with an open hand, doing all these things, trying out different cards. How do they work in the deck? Then they go to singles play. Then they go to the locals, practice for that, so they can practice for the bigger events. That's the way to do it. But we don't always have time, and I will testify to that. We don't always have time for that. So thank the gods nowadays that we actually have Yu-Gi-Oh! Online, so we can play test with our buddies that are far away or anything. But like I said, even if you're testing online, it's never the same as the true thing. It's not, because there are tells, there are little things you'll pick up if you play in Yu-Gi-Oh! In real life compared to playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Online. It's a big difference, but that's a topic for a different day. But tell me what your thoughts are down below, guys. Is there anything that you do with your buddies, or that you do when you're building a deck or trying to learn a deck, that you take into your account when you're playtesting? This is a video where I would like you to share all that information down below in the description to help other players out there, so we all can become better Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. Because if we all become better Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, then this community as a whole becomes a better community. So guys, till next time, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling. I apologize if this was a very complex video, but I wanted to go into detail and break it down into 3 different phases. There's a little bit of other little phases in between, but I tried to simplify it as best I could and speak as clear as possible, and I hope I did a good job. I went over my notes and everything, and I pretty much hit the nail on the head from what I wrote down in my notes prior to this video. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.